So God's on this mission, and God's mission is to reveal himself and his glory. We are on a mission too. You know what our mission is? To protect ourselves and our story. Becoming a Christian is not just a call to follow Christ, it's a call to a whole new kingdom. Okay? It's a call to a whole new kingdom. This little diagram may help us understand it. And you guys, you can draw this on a napkin. You start by drawing a circle over here, and in the middle of it you write God's kingdom. Okay? God's kingdom is all about God. It's all about his story. It's all about his glory. Now, who is king over God's kingdom? Okay, the safest answer is always Jesus, right? Okay, so you write Jesus up above God's kingdom. Okay? The other circle over here, you write my kingdom in the middle of it. And this is about my story. Who's king over my kingdom? Well, that would be moi. Me, right? I'm king over my kingdom. See, I'm king. Now, here's the problem. When we become a Christian, here's what we wrongly think happens. Start up there at the word Jesus, okay? And draw a dotted line over right into my kingdom. We think when we become a Christian, Jesus comes and joins our kingdom to make it work. We even share the gospel this way. We say things like this: your marriage is a mess, you need Jesus. Your kids are out of control, you need Jesus. Your finances are upside down, you need Jesus. Now, with Jesus in my life, should that affect how I relate to my wife? Sure. To what end? Why do I want Jesus in my marriage? So there's less conflict and better sex? I'm all for both of those, but that's not the ultimate reason. The reason I want Jesus in my marriage is so that the two of us, as we become one, become a picture to the rest of the world of Jesus' love for his church and his commitment. That's what Paul says, right, in Ephesians. Why do I want Jesus in my parenting? So I don't have to deal with a pregnant daughter and a son who's on drugs, which I don't want to deal with either of those. But why? So that the world around us can see what a family that lives in harmony, that's being transformed from the inside out, being changed by the power of God, looks like. Why do I want him in the middle of my finances? So I can continue to buy all the things I want and still have money left at the end of the month? No, I want him in the middle of my finances so I can be a wise steward of what he's entrusted to me, so that I can spend the money that I have to further his kingdom. You see, it's so easy for us to get so focused on our kingdom that we lose sight of the bigger story of what God's trying to do. And my kingdom ends up colliding with his kingdom. So the next question we got to ask is this: whose kingdom are we living for? Now watch how this works. So there's a gal in your small group, and she's 32 years old, and she comes to group on Thursday night. She goes, I just got back from a doctor's appointment, and I've been diagnosed with a rare brain tumor. It's inoperable and terminal, and I have at most 9 months to live. Okay, what questions are racing through her mind? Why me? Right? Why is this happening to me? Why this? Why is this happening to me? Why now? What did I do wrong? Where's God? Now, if you've gone through any kind of difficulty or been thrown any kind of a curveball in life, you've probably asked some of those same questions. Why me? Why this? Why now? What did I do wrong? Where's God? You see, we all live for a story, and we have chapters in the story of our life already kind of predetermined in our mind. See, the chapters of the story of her life is she's going to see her daughter graduate from high school. She's going to help her move into her first dorm room and decorate it. She's going to be there helping her pick out her bridal gown. She's going to be in that hospital room watching the delivery of her first grandchild. There's no chapter in the story of her book that includes terminal cancer. But there is in God's. See, God's not sitting up there and all of a sudden terminal cancer, and he goes, whoa, I wasn't expecting that one. Now what am I going to do? See, God's in control of all of those things. And nothing happens in our life. Yes, we live in a fallen world and we experience evil around us and we experience the death of sin, which cancer is. Death is a result of sin. But even that is not outside of God's determined will and what he's going to do in our lives. He's not surprised by it. He's not shocked by it. He's not set back by it. He doesn't have to regroup because of it. It's one of the chapters in the book of his story where he's going to bring glory to himself through that. That doesn't make sense to us. But it brings me back to, do I really believe that there is a sovereign creator God who's in control of all things? And has behind everything that happens in my life, my good and his glory. Because see, it's about him and his story, not about me and my story. So what has actually happened here is Jesus does not come down and enter our kingdom to make it work. So you might even have been at a point where you tried God and you said, well, I tried this Jesus thing, and you know what, it just didn't work for me. Well, what are you saying? He didn't come and fix my kingdom on my terms, on my timing, the way that I think he should. See, in reality, the call to become a Christian is a call to follow Christ, and it's the call to a whole new kingdom. Jesus takes me and places me in his kingdom for his glory, for his story. That's what Paul said in our passage, Colossians 1. Verses 9 through 14 says this, and so from the day we heard, we have not ceased to pray for you, asking that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will. What does he want them filled with? Know what God wants you to do. I want you to be filled with the knowledge of his will and all spiritual wisdom and understanding. Why? So I can be smart. Verse 10, so as to walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing him, bearing fruit in every good work, and increasing in the knowledge of God, being strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, for all endurance and patience with joy, giving thanks to the Father who has qualified you to share in the inheritance of the saints in light. And here it is, verse 13. He has delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption and the forgiveness of sins. Wow, we spend so much time trying to build our own kingdom on our way and in our terms. And that's because we believe we need to be king of our kingdom.
That should have sounded very familiar. Like some of it word for word. That was an 8-minute review of our 2 hours together last night. I woke up this morning and I just got this sense I'm going to read back through Ephesians. And it was really fascinating what jumped out to me today as I was reading back through Ephesians. So grab your Bible and turn to Ephesians 4. We're going to insert a little devotional this morning that I didn't have planned. But I think this is really key for us to have a biblical framework for the rest of our day and even our breakout session today. I've got some places highlighted here in yellow. And every time I hit a yellow highlight here, I'll tell you what the verses are. And if somebody could just read that out loud, I don't care who, take turns. You read one and somebody else read the next one, okay? So let's start in Ephesians 4, verses 1 through 3. Somebody read that for us.
I therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called, I'm sorry, that goes on first. To which you have been called with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace.
Okay, we're in a new kingdom now, right? It's a radically different kingdom. It's an inside-out kingdom. It's an upside-down kingdom. The values in God's kingdom are almost in antithesis to the values of the world's kingdom. And so what Paul is saying here, you're in a new kingdom now. Here's how you're supposed to walk in this new kingdom. Walk in the manner worthy of this new kingdom that you're in. Look at it. Humility, gentleness, patience, bearing with one another. Okay, skip down to verse 17. Somebody read 17 and 18 for us.
Now this I say and testify in the Lord, that you must no longer walk as the Gentiles do, in the futility of their minds. They are darkened in their understanding, alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them, due to their hardness of heart.
Okay, there's a good description of living for my story that we talked about last night. There it is. Okay? Chapter 5, verses 1 and 2.
Therefore, be imitators of God as beloved children, and walk in love as Christ loved us, and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God.
So if you're going to summarize everything Paul has said and is going to say about what is it like to live in this new kingdom, and what is it like to walk in this new kingdom, we're now to walk in love. Jesus was asked, what's the greatest commandment? What was his answer? Love God and love your neighbor, love each other, just, so there it is. Love God, love others. That's the premise, that's the core of what it means to and how we're to walk in this new kingdom. Okay, verse 8.
For at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light.
See, one time you were over here, darkness. But guess what? He put you over here and transferred you into the kingdom of light. Verse 15 and, 15.
Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise.
Verse 18, go ahead and read that while you're at it.
And do not get drunk with wine, for that's debauchery. Be filled with the Spirit.
And go ahead and read 21. You're right there, you're cruising.
Submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ.
Okay, walk now wisely, not unwisely. And how are you going to do that? Well, don't be controlled by anything other than the Spirit of God. That's what, to drink or not to drink isn't the issue. The issue is what's controlling you. So don't let something like wine control you, but instead, be being filled. That's what that verb is there. That verb tense is to be being filled. It's something that has ongoing things that is continually happening. Be being filled with the Spirit, okay? So be filled with the Spirit and then submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Those two principles is what he's going to unpack in the rest of Ephesians, especially now he's going to say, well, what does that look like? What does it look like if we're to be being filled with the Spirit and be submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ? What does that look like in a marriage? What does that look like as kids? What does that look like as an employer and employee? And that's what he does in the rest of Ephesians 5. So that's the premise for us as we begin to look at walking in this new kingdom that we're now a part of. The foundations for our walk have got to be being filled with the Spirit and submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. Okay? But there's a problem as we try to do this. And here's the problem. I'm still trying to build my own kingdom, and I don't often realize it. Because even though this is where God placed me, guess where I keep going back to? Right over to here. And here's what happens when I'm trying to do this. People and circumstances aren't cooperating with me. I'm supposed to be the king. They're supposed to treat me like the king, and they're not. Circumstances are all supposed to align with my will. Now, when you think about it, when you're struggling with something, I'll bet your struggle is either with a difficult person or a difficult circumstance. I don't know what doesn't fall into those two categories. Is there anything you're going to struggle with that isn't either a difficult person or a difficult circumstance? And sometimes you've got them all at the same time. Now remember, last night we talked about living our stories. Matter of fact, flip back in your notes to the diagram of living for my story and living for God's story, and I want you just to notice something really quick. When we're living for our story, how do we attempt to remedy the story problems that we run into? See if you can find it there in the chart. That's why I didn't put it up here. I want you to find it there. How do we tend to try to remedy the story problems that we run into? Avoiding pain is number one, okay? Fix it or escape it. Avoid it, fix it, escape it. Right? That's how we try to deal with these difficult people and difficult circumstances. I want to unpack that for you a little bit this morning and look at how we do this. So we call this 4 approaches to a problem. And the first one there is the escape it. Okay, there's me, there's the problem, okay? And now what I do is I don't want to know that, I don't want to feel that, I don't want to know that, I don't want to feel pain, so I suppress or ignore it, deny it, try to shove it out of sight, out of mind. This person wants to skip down the yellow brick road of life, actually believing Oz is a reality. Do you have any idea what I just said? There you go again, you know? The Wizard of Oz, right? Oh. No, that's all right.
That was basic.
So this person believes if they can keep everybody happy, life will be fine. If they can keep everybody happy, there won't be conflict. Conflict is bad. Get rid of conflict. Do whatever you have to do to get rid of conflict. Okay? I'm the poster child for this. So here's how it would look in my life previously. I'm at the office and I'm a half-hour drive to home. I promised my wife I'd be home at 6 o'clock. She calls me at 10 to 6 to say, "You almost home?" Guess where I'm at? I'm in the office. So you know what I tell her? I'm walking out the door. Am I walking out the door? I'm sitting at my desk and I've got at least 15 minutes worth of stuff that has to be on the boss's desk before I can go home. So 15 minutes later, I jump in my car, driving like crazy. I hit every stinking red light there is to hit, right? And now I'm on the freeway and there's another Prius in front of me driving the speed limit. What's up with this, right? I'm all tense, right? I get home, I walk in the house, and the air is thick. Because, see, I already told my wife that I'd left the office. She expected that I left the office. I'm not home yet. So you know what she has in her mind? I'm in an accident on the freeway. I'm not just in an accident on the freeway. I got killed because I haven't called her. If I'd have been in an accident and not got killed, I would have called her, but I haven't called her, so I had to get killed. So she's trying to figure out what is she going to say to people at the funeral on Saturday. And I walk in the door. She is uptight, incensed. So you know what I do? I go over to the stove and I start stirring up this stuff. I go set the table and I get water out and I help and how's your day and everything. You know, I'm serving her just because I have such this huge servant's heart. What am I doing?
Damage control.
Damage control. And the way I'm doing damage control is to be nice. See, I'm being nice. You can't be mad at me. Conflict, bad. Do whatever you have to do. Now, here's the problem. If you stay engaged in relationships at all for any amount of time, you're going to run into difficult people. You're going to run into people that hurt you. You're going to have people that disappoint you. You're going to have people that don't meet your expectations. And so, if this is your approach to trying to deal with those problems, you're going to have to start withdrawing from relationship or live in major suppression. And that's going to start to eat you alive from the inside out. That's approach number one. I don't see a problem. No problem. There's no problem here. I don't see a problem. Okay? Approach number two. Someday I'll figure out how to do this. There we go. Okay, approach number two says this. Oh yeah, there's a problem. There's a problem, all right, and I'm going to fix this problem. I'm going to fix it, and if the problem is me, I'm going to fix me. But you know, the problem is usually not me. The problem is almost always who? You. So I'm going to fix you. So this person goes around and around with the problem is they control by convincing, arguing, worrying, revenge. They seek to control the people and circumstances in their life in a little bit different way. Rather than just trying to keep everybody happy, what they do is try to fix the people. Okay? Now, just with that little bit of introduction to that, and I'm going to unpack this a little bit more and talk about marriage in a minute and how this looks, but how many of you would tend to be more over here on the number one side? Raise your hand. Okay, how many of you would tend to be more over here on the number two side? Raise your hand. Okay, now while you're holding your hand, keep your hand up. Those that just did that. Typically, your spouse was the other one. These two people usually marry each other. Not always, but usually. Here's why. Okay, number one says, I just want to find somebody I can keep happy. And guess what? If I do A, B, C, and D, this other person is really happy. And this person says, I just want somebody who will do A, B, C, and D. And they're doing A, B, C, and D. They understand me. They understand me. We must be in love. Let's get married. And you know what happens? In the marriage, that becomes the very thing, and that approach to life that causes this. Now, you'll occasionally have two number ones marry each other. You'll know because you're having a church picnic, and they're sitting there at the table holding hands, smiling at each other, and with their kids, all hell is breaking loose. Their kids are running across the top of the picnic table, knocking food off, and they're just totally oblivious to it. Life's fine. You'll occasionally have two number twos marry each other, but usually they can't survive courtship without killing each other. Now, I've recently run into more of these than I've ever seen before. Two number twos married each other. And they've all had one thing in common. They met on the internet. It's really fascinating. They met on the internet. They met this really nice person on the screen. And they met this other really nice person on the screen. So they flew across country to meet this person for a weekend. They flew over here for a weekend. Then they spent a little bit of time together. They get married. And 3 days into the honeymoon, they go, who are you? You're not the person that was on that screen. Okay. When approach number two doesn't work, then we go to approach number three. And that's escape it altogether. And that's saying this. This is just too painful. I cannot deal with this pain anymore. I have to get out of here. My wife is just too painful to live with her. But guess what? Susie down the hall at work really likes me. She really respects me. She really treats me nice. She really makes me feel loved. Boy, we could be such a dynamic team in ministry together. So I got to get rid of this pain, chase this over here to escape the pain, and guess what I do? I create a bigger problem than the one I'm running from. Your escape can be into your hobbies, TV, social media, porn, affairs, drugs, alcohol, work. My escape from the pain in my marriage was ministry. I'd go to the church office and I'd create all these new programs and do all this stuff, and everybody says, oh, Randy, Randy, Randy. I go home and I get criticism and condemnation. Guess where I want to spend my time? So the more time I spend doing that, the more affirmation I get over here. But guess what? The more I get over here. That's why I'm convinced a lot of my early days of ministry is just wood, hay, and stubble. It's all going to burn up because it had nothing to do with the glory of God. It was me protecting myself from pain. Okay, there's a fourth approach that we haven't talked about yet. Now, what the fourth approach is this. Instead of living for my story and my glory, I'm going to live in God's story, for His glory. Okay? And what I'm going to do is, whatever this problem or pain is, I'm going to face it head on, because I'm going to turn to God and His resources, and I'm going to rely on Him and accept God's plan for this, rather than try to run my own plan. I'm going to quit trying to build this over here, and I'm going to go live over here. Okay? Now, let me expand that for you. Now, instead of the pain that we have there, that's interesting. Paya. That's the Asian form of pain. Paya. Paya. Okay. Look what the logs are on the fire, because now we have it looking like fire. What's the logs? The difficult people in difficult circumstances. Okay? And so what happens when I'm coming along in life and I hit the difficult people in difficult circumstances, I'll react out of self-protection. Okay, when your hand goes in a flame, what do you do? No, you don't. You leave it there and you go, wow, this is getting really, really hot. Man, I think I can smell flesh burning. Maybe I should pull my hand out of the fire. So you pull your hand out. No, you don't do that, do you? What do? You yank it out. Do you think about it? It's instinctive, isn't it? Pain. Pull it out. When we hit the pain of these difficult people in difficult circumstances, we have learned how to instinctively deal with that pain by yanking out of it. And you know how we do that? By turning to approach number 1, approach number 2, approach number 3, and we don't even think about it. It's just instinctive. As a matter of fact, we've taken enough personality tests that reinforce that. I'm sorry that you're a turtle when it comes to conflict. I'm a shark. Just accept me the way that I am. Well, maybe the way you am, God wants to change. Because that's out of self-protection. Okay? So when I do, I'm making this wrong decision, and you're going to see some of these things in your life. You're going to see unbelief, you're going to doubt God, you're going to see pride, selfishness, fear, anxiety, self-oriented goals, anger, depression, or maybe even busyness, detachment, all those kinds of things you're going to see in your life. Why? Because you're trying to protect your own kingdom. Now, did all those things I list sound familiar to anything you heard last night? Last night we watched a video about roadblocks. And in those roadblocks said, well, I'm not living for God, my goals, I'm living for God's goals. Well, if you see these roadblocks, if you're reacting to these roadblocks, we had a big warning sign. If you're reacting to those roadblocks in any of those ways, it means you're really living for your goals. Guess what? This is the same list of roadblocks. You see any of these things in your life, you know what it tells you you're doing? You are operating out of self-protection. Okay? Now, there's approach number 1, number 2, number 3. Now, approach number 4 says instead, I'm sorry that I just did that. I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to turn to God and His resources. I'm going to turn to God and His resources instead, okay? I love that Asian pain there. That's just okay. Now, when I turn to God and His resources, now instead of unbelief in God, I'm believing and trusting God. Now there's humility and love for others. Now I'm trusting God and pursuing His goals. Now there's gratefulness even in the midst of difficulty. I want to be around God's people where other people are struggling like me, but we're helping and encouraging each other to look to God and His resources. And to remind each other that God is glorious, great, gracious, and good because I forgot. And so now the result is there's hope in God. Look at the result over here. Hopelessness, unrest, I'm focused on myself and my circumstances, I'm in bondage to myself, there's further frustration, depression, sinful attitudes, lack of spiritual fruit, bad fruit in my life, broken relationships, and your kingdom is crumbling. That's the end result when you live for your story. It always has a bad ending. But on the other hand, when I turn to God and His resources, and I live for His kingdom now there's hope in God, there's rest, shalom. I'm focused on God and others. I'm set free from self. There's peace and joy in the pain. There's Christ-like attitudes. There's the fruit of the Spirit. There's love. There's God-honoring relationships. And guess what? God's kingdom grows. Now, let's unpack that a little bit further. Okay? We have these three typical ways we approach these difficult people in difficult circumstances. Approach number one, avoiding the problem, we call the controller of circumstances. Now, I don't like the term, I don't like the title, but I can't come up with a better one. Both types, both approach number one and number two, are trying to control the circumstances and people in their life. But they just go at it from a different angle, okay? Approach number one says avoid the problem. Their goal is to find peace. They become a people pleaser. Their approach is to withdraw, ignore, rather than face the problem, avoid conflict. Now watch this. Here's their view of God. Let me stop right there and back up. A.W. Tozer said it this way. The most important thing about you is what you think about when you think about God. Let me say it again. The most important thing about you is what you think about when you think about God. And I've thought a lot about this over the last couple of years, and I've come to this problem, or this conclusion. Every problem that we create in our life, or the way that we respond to the problems in our life that we don't even create, those both reveal what I really think about God and what I understand about the gospel. Everything gets back to your view of God and your understanding of the gospel. Those two things drive everything. That's why we better be thinking right about God, and we better understand the implications of the gospel. And the gospel is a much bigger thing than I get to go to heaven and not go to hell. It's the story of God unfolding in and through my life, putting Him on display, living that out in community, being a movie trailer to the whole rest of the world about what His kingdom is. That was like a really good 30-second summary of last night. Okay? So, my view of God. What does this person think about God in those moments? That approach number one. Well, God doesn't love them because their circumstances aren't pleasant. You guys, I hear this over and over and over. Yeah, I know it's wrong to divorce my spouse. But I found this other person who really makes me happy, and I know God wants to make me happy. I hear that over and over and over. And I go, no, He doesn't. He doesn't want to make you happy. He wants to make you holy. I'm not concerned about your happiness. Right now, He's concerned about your holiness. Someday, when He restores all things back to their created intention, and Revelation says there's no more crying, no more tears, no more weeping, no more... Okay. But right now, He's trying to make us holy. He's setting us apart to make us look like Him, to put Him on display to the rest of the world. It's not about you being happy. And I just tell you, if you're looking to your spouse to make you happy, you're going to be so disappointed so quickly. They're not going to do it. So their view of God, they get angry at God because life is not comfortable. Where are you, God? You're supposed to show up over here, and in my kingdom, there's supposed to be peace, no conflict, and I'm supposed to be happy. And God didn't work for me. What drives them? They fear the future. So they try to ignore it. They pretend. They live in lives and they pretend that stuff's not going to happen. So this person, the approach number one, the control of circumstances, they don't even look into the future at all. They just don't even want to look there because it's too scary and they can't control it. So I'm just going to ignore it, and I'll live right here today, and I'll deal with whatever happens later, but right now I'm not going to do that. Okay? I have no idea why that doesn't come up when I tap on it like it's supposed to. Okay. All right, so there's approach number one. Now approach number two. They're the ones that are going to fix the problem, right? Okay? Their primary goal is power. Where the controller of circumstance, approach number one, wanted peace, their primary approach is power. They become a manipulator. They attack people rather than the problem, demands that others play by their rules, and they have a lust for power and control. By the way, over here I didn't mention this. This person over here has a lust for pleasure. Whatever makes me feel good and feel good now. This person wants to be in control. Whatever gives me control and gives me control now over all the people in my world. What's their view of God? Because if their problem comes back to a wrong view of God, what's the wrong view of God? They believe that God doesn't love them because God doesn't meet their expectations. And God doesn't come through, so they have to. I know the Holy Spirit can convict my husband, but this chapter in this book that I marked and stuck on the nightstand next to his bed will help him. They fear the future, so they try to control it. This person ignores it. I fear the future, so I don't want to see it. This person looks ahead, projects into the future about what's going to happen or might happen. They believe it's going to happen. So then back here, they try to orchestrate and control everything to avoid that ever happening. So you know what they do? They look ahead and go, oh, boy, that could happen. Whoa, I'm back here. My wife does this really well. I tell her she gets double mileage out of worry. She worries about stuff that may never happen, and then if it does happen, she gets to worry about it again. I go, Janet, come join me in denial. It's such a place to live. It's peaceful there. It's just so nice. Come join me. Okay, I have a handout somewhere back there. I don't know where it's at, but there should be one that is a contrast and a comparison of controllers. If you can find that, pass that out. What I did in those things that you just saw here is just kind of a summary of what we call the controller circumstances, controller people. And yes, a question.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, like, over time, is it possible where you can be mixing, or maybe a number two person, just because of the cycle, would maybe start going to number one, or?
Okay, well let me tell you about that. Okay. Now, if these, okay, let me start this with this, because that's a great question. If these are our attempts, 1, 2, and 3, are our attempts to control our world in the flesh, right? Okay, that's what that is. This doesn't, you guys, this does not label and identify me as a person. It's not like this. Hi, I'm Randy. I'm a controller of circumstances. And you all say, hi. No, it's not like that. Who I am is a new creation in Christ. Now, when I'm in the flesh, that's what it looks like. Okay? That's the first premise. Now, so the degree that I'm in the flesh is going to be the degree that this is most evident. So the more I'm controlled by the Spirit of God, the more I'm being filled with the Spirit, the less you should see these things in my life. Okay? Now, there are some people who are switch hitters. My daughter's a switch hitter. Now, she'll pick whichever strategy seems to work at the moment best. Okay? Now, my wife in the home is a number 2. Outside of the home, she's a number 1. She doesn't fear our rejection in the home, so she doesn't have to protect herself from our rejection. She just lets it fly. Outside of the home, she fears other people's rejection, so she's really nice to them when she's in the flesh. Right? So you can be a switch hitter, or you can go one way to the other. Now, what happens with this person, when they're going along, they can do what we call hitting the wall. Their whole approach is to suppress and ignore and live in denial. Wonderful place to be. But when circumstances or things happen where they can no longer suppress reality and pain is there for whatever reason and they have to face it, they can sometimes hit the wall. When they hit the wall, they wake up and they say this: I've been trying to please this other person my entire life. I'm darned if I do and darned if I don't. Why am I doing this? To heck with them, to heck with God and everything. I'm going to take care of myself. And then they turn into this. So now you've got this person was married to this person. Now this person's acting like this, and you got two people going like this, and you got fireworks like crazy, and it's not even the 4th of June, let alone the 4th of July. So they can hit the wall, and that can happen. Let me tell you a story. I had a guy come into my office. I better check my time here. Okay, I had a guy come into my office, and he goes, I think my wife's having hormonal problems. Okay. Well, what makes you think that? She's just being really, really weird. I go, okay. What's she doing that's really, really weird? Well, he says, I got to back up. He said, we were born and raised in the church. We grew up in the church. We met and we were high school sweethearts. We were voted most likely couple to succeed. We got married right out of high school. And right out of high school, then we started getting involved and sponsored in the student ministries. And we've been sponsoring student ministries. We've been married 20 years now. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she's starting to hang out in the bars and sleep around with all these other guys. There's got to be a hormonal thing that snapped or something. And wow. Well, do you think she'd be willing to talk to me? I don't know. Ask her. So the next week, the two of them come in together. They sit down and go, I'm really glad. Thanks for coming. Really glad you're here. So, I've been around this stuff enough to know there's always two sides to every story. I heard your husband's side, and I would just really like to hear yours. These were the first words out of her mouth. I didn't want those flowers at our wedding. I wanted a different florist. She went on for 25 minutes, went through all 20 years of their marriage, listing all these things she wanted that she didn't get. And he had no idea that she even wanted those things because she never ever gave her opinion. See, if she's going to keep him happy and he was a major number 2 off the chart, and this way, this way, this way, this way, well, to try to keep him happy then, I'll just do whatever he wants to do and I won't even express my opinion. As a matter of fact, after a while, you learn you don't even want to have an opinion because your opinion might not be received and then the other person's going to be upset. See what happened with her? She hit the wall. She woke up one day and said, I'm darned if I do, I'm darned if I don't. Why am I doing this? And then she goes, and you know what? He doesn't care about me, which he didn't. He just wants to have everything his way, which he did. He's a perfectionist, and I'm just there to be a slave, which is how he viewed her. She goes, these guys at the bars are really interested in my opinion. I go, no, they're not. They're interested in getting in your pants. They're not interested in your opinion at all. Oh, no, they are. And see, for a split second, when I'm interacting with them, I feel accepted and loved. And it's worth all of the rest of the train wreck stuff that she was doing to get that little split second of feeling accepted and loved, which she got none of it from her husband. She hit the wall. Okay? Good question. Any other questions? Okay. Now I passed out a contrast comparison for you, and here's the only thing that's gonna be a little confusing. We put controller of people in this on the left side, and controller, that's approach number 2, and approach number 1 is on the right side. I really need to fix that. So just so that you know, approach number 1 is the controller of circumstances, approach number 2 is the controller of people. They're just in the flip-flop columns in there. But that's gonna go through and give you a good summary of how, when I'm living for my story, and I run into story problems, how in the flesh, apart from God, we try to maintain our kingdom and our story the way we want it. Okay? So you can take that home and look it over, and we're not going to go through that. It's just for you as a resource to take home with you to do more research on that. Okay? More study on that. And Howie and Denny came up with this thing, just watching these patterns in people's marriages and how they related over time. And God gave them some really keen insight as to how people reacted and why they did what they did. And that's kind of their summation of their observation of seeing what, and you guys, here's what's fascinating. Once you really understand this, you can really see this in people. Sin is not that creative. It just isn't. It really falls into some very, very consistent patterns. And they're very observable. Okay? So there you have that. Okay, now.
Hey Randy, not to derail your direction on this, but just one clarifying thing on this. You kind of just went into, it's not your identity. Obviously, identity is Jesus.
Uh-huh.
Have you seen, or maybe you have a story of an example where people get pigeonholed into one of these and like you can't get out of it? So you're just doing that because you're a controller of people, or you're just doing that because you're a controller of circumstances, and then, you know what I'm saying? About
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that really makes sense. Here's what happens. And there's one other thing I got to share. Here's what happens. So this is what can happen to me and Janet when we're in the flesh. I'm reacting, and now she's got a grid up against me. And that grid up is I'm just a people pleaser because she's labeled me and judged me as a people pleaser. So anything that I do that looks remotely like a people pleaser, she just accuses me of being a people pleaser. You're just being a people pleaser. Well, you know what I do? I got a grid up too. Guess what my grid is up? You're a major controller and a manipulator. And so what happens is if she does anything at all that looks remotely controlling, boom, that grid lights up, and she's just being controlling, and my back gets arched, and I'm going to stand up to her. Well, that's really godly. So when I'm in the flesh, it's not that I got pigeonholed or stuck there. What it is I'm using that information and understanding now that becomes a grid. This is why forgiveness is so important, because I got to take those grids down. I got to take those down and not keep looking through that grid and judging that person through the grid. So it's not I'm stuck there. What it is I'm making a judgment about this other person, and I'm filtering everything they do through my judgment grid. Okay? Now, did that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay, now here's the deal. Controller of circumstance, controller of people. The goal is not that the controller of circumstance quits denying and starts becoming more like a controller of people, and the controller of people quits manipulating and becomes more like a controller of circumstances. That's not our goal. The goal is to become more like Christ and to be being filled with the Spirit. So if I'm a controller of circumstance, I need to be moving this direction of becoming more like Christ, living for His kingdom, and being filled by His Spirit. And the controller of people needs to be being filled with His Spirit and trusting God and living for His kingdom. So it's not move this way, it's move this way. Okay? Okay. We're going to take a break in just a few minutes, but I want to lay a foundation for where we're going to go. Because after the break, we're going to break into men and women. And Tom is going to take the men into the worship center, and the gals are going to stay here, and Denny's going to work with you. And we're going to talk about what our role now is in our marriages when we're living for God's kingdom. What does it look like now that I am in God's kingdom and I'm married? Okay? Those of you that aren't married, all the things we're going to talk about are character qualities that you can begin developing in your life right now. You don't have to wait to get married. As a matter of fact, if you do, you're already going to be behind the game. You need to be working and growing and developing these things in your life now. Okay? So let's talk a minute about God's design for marriage. The design of God for marriage is to leave one's parents, to commit to each other, and to develop oneness spiritually, emotionally, and physically. Okay? Now, there's a lot I could add to this, and I should. This is not a total comprehensive definition. You know, I really should say God's design for marriage is for one man and one woman to leave their parents. Okay? That really should be in there. I can't just assume that anymore. So that really probably needs to be added to that definition. But it's this whole thing of leaving and now becoming one. And it's this oneness that God is after, because it's this oneness in marriage that is a picture of the oneness of God and how the Trinity of God all functions together as one, even though they're separate. And there's something then also about this oneness and the love that comes in that becomes a picture of Christ's love for his church. That's what Paul talked about in Ephesians 5. There's this mystery in marriage, and the mystery of marriage is somehow supposed to reflect Christ's love for the church. Okay? So let's unpack this a minute. First is leaving. The husband and wife's relationship to their parents must be changed. Each must make the husband-wife relationship the top human priority. Now, the husband shifts authority over him to God, so he's living under his parents' authority. Now, he's over here and he shifts his authority to being under God. Okay? The wife shifts her authority to being under her husband. And what that looks like, Denny's going to unpack for you gals, okay? Both must not permit their parents to control or intimidate them or to undermine their marriage. And my daughter just got married last month, and we've been talking about this. Because for those of you that have had your kids get married, man, it's really hard to make that shift to where I'm no longer the counselor, I'm no longer the coach. All I am is a consultant, which means they come to me when they want to, and only when they want to, and they hear what I have to say, and they decide whether or not they're going to accept it or reject it. And that's it. That's it's a hard shift. I don't know if I could ever do this. I doubt if I could ever do this. But a friend of mine said she had just gotten married and hadn't been married very long, and her and her husband had a moment of intense fellowship, a fight. And so she jumped in the car and drove over to her parents. She knocked on the front door because she didn't have the key to the house anymore. And her father answered her and said, "Oh, hi. What's going on?" "Well, Kendall and I just had this big fight." "Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, so, what's your last name?" And she said, "Well, it's this." "Yeah. There's nobody with that last name that lives here. You need to go home." Close the door on her face and walk away. I don't think I could do that. I'm pretty sure I couldn't do that. But you get the point? He understood what leaving meant. You got a different last name. You got to go home and work it out. Okay? Leaving. Now, interesting. What do you think are the three leading reasons, they're not necessarily the cause, but the three leading reasons people give for divorce?
Money.
Okay? Money is number 2.
No longer
No, it's not incompatible, no longer love. It may be that, but here's how they describe it. Communication. We just don't communicate. We can't, communication. And love and all those things kind of wrap around that. But number 1 is communication. We just can't communicate. We don't get along. We don't get along because we can't communicate. We're incompatible. We can't communicate. Okay? So communication. That's number 1. Number 2 is finances. Guess what number 3 is? It's not pornography. It's not an affair. It's not children.
In-laws.
In-laws.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that something? In-laws. See how important this is? Leaving. And I had to deal with this. So, Lynn's back from her honeymoon. The day she gets back from her honeymoon, I get a call from her. "Dad, I'm supposed to go to work and the battery on my car is dead." And everything inside of me wanted to say, "I'll be right there. I'll come over. You can take my car, go to work. I'll take your battery into AutoZone. I'll get it fixed. If it costs money, I'll pay for it. I'll stick it in for you so when you get home, it's all taken care of." Everything inside of me wanted to do that because I'm Papa Bear taking care of my little baby bear, right? Guess what? She's no longer my little baby bear. So I said, well, have you called Patrick yet? You need to call Patrick and find out what he wants you to do. That does not come natural to me. That's part of leaving and cleaving, okay? And there's people to this day that have been married 20 years that are still allowing one of their parents to control their marriage. Okay? The other thing that can happen, the husband and wife relations, it's got to change. It's got to become the top human priority. Kids come along. Guess what can happen when kids come along? This relationship is no longer the priority relationship. These relationships become the priority relationship. And we end up what we call a child-centered home, where everything revolves around the kids. And we all struggle with that. I struggled with that. There's so much stuff you have to do. It's so easy just to let soccer, volleyball, everything else start dictating your whole world and your whole life. And the next thing you know, as a couple, you're running all over the place, and by the time everything's done, you're exhausted and you go to bed and you're not doing anything to build your relationship and continue to foster that with each other. And then all of a sudden the kids are gone, and we're just going through this. We're empty nesters for the first time. And it's like, it's really quiet at the dinner table. we got to learn all new things to talk about. Because we're not just talking about what happened in the kids' lives today and what we did here or there. So what can happen, is when it's been a child-centered home and the child became the priority relationship, all of a sudden when the children are gone, there's no foundation in that relationship anymore. That's why you see so many divorces happen as the kids are about ready to leave the home. And when that relationship hasn't been fostered and nurtured and cared for, you look at each other and go, I'm stuck with just you now? I don't know if I really like this program. Okay, so you can't let kids overshadow the priority relationship of the husband and wife. And what we can do in the Christian community, under this umbrella of the priority of the family, we become family. Oh, we're not child-centered. No, we're not child-centered. But we become family-centered rather than kingdom-centered. So we don't see the family and what's happening in the family as a way to put God on display and to live for His kingdom. Our kingdom becomes our family. And we don't even realize it, and we spiritualize it and call it being a mature Christian or godly parents. And at that point, what tends to happen, our kids have become idols in our life. And remember what idols never fail to do? They never fail to fail. Okay? Okay. I want to take you to a couple passages. Keep going on this. Here's a passage of scripture for this. Ephesians 5:31. Somebody read this for us.
For this reason, a man shall leave his father and his mother, and shall be joined to his wife, the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is great, but I am speaking with reference to Christ and the church.
Okay, this one flesh thing, I have a hard time getting my arms around that, and I have a hard time living that out, but that's really the key. And that's the key, because this one flesh thing is two people coming together as one. And the reason that that so many marriages and sexual intimacy has gotten so messed up is because the goal of intimacy has become orgasm, not oneness. And if that's the goal, then guess what? It really doesn't matter who it's with. That's where that takes you. As long as you experience that. See, oneness is totally different. Okay? Okay, cleaving. The first was leaving. The next is cleaving. The husband and wife must make a lifetime commitment to one another to become one. Marriage is an irrevocable covenant to which husband and wife are sealed to each other for as long as they both shall live. Stop threatening divorce. I said it pretty strong, didn't I? Okay? You're in that moment of fighting and arguing, intense fellowship, and so you're going to get, I'm just going to divorce you. I'm in the middle of a situation right now where they keep threatening divorce with each other in front of the kids. And they have no idea what they're doing to their kids. There shouldn't even be a word in our vocabulary as believers. Okay? I just can't say that. It's a lifetime commitment. Now, okay. Back in 1995, when our marriage had hit the height of its lows, for the first time I understood why Christians got divorced. Don't make it right. I understood it though. Because see, if my whole thing is to avoid conflict and to find pleasure, and I'm not getting pleasure here, instead I'm just getting conflict, we'll eliminate the problem. But do you see how distorted that thinking is? Because what is that thinking all about? Who am I concerned about? The glory of God? I'm worried about me. Moi. There it is again, see? I'm right back to here. It's a relationship of oneness that produces a growing relational and emotional intimacy. Sexual unity, becoming one flesh, is a giving over one's body and emotions fully and intimately to their spouse. And this should be characterized by mutual submission. The word cleaving means stuck like glue. We've both left our parents, we've come together, and now we're stuck like glue together. That's why it says, whatever God has joined together, what? Let no man tear asunder or tear apart. As much as the world wants to say sexual intimacy in marriage really is just a biological thing, why is it that divorce is always so devastating? Because it's a tearing apart of something that was put together and became one. It's ripping it apart. So it's this cleaving together, okay? Somebody read this verse for us. Ephesians 5:21.
And be subject to one another in the fear of Christ.
Okay. Out of my awe and reverence of Christ, you know what that should produce in me? The desire to be submissive, subject to you. That's backwards. That is certainly counter our culture, is it not? That's the upside down kingdom. We're all subject to one another? No, I'm supposed to be the king on top. Next, a marriage relationship is to be a loving relationship. The marriage is a picture of Christ's love for the church. Okay, what does that look like? Tom's going to unpack this for you guys next hour. It's to be sacrificial. He gave his life. It's to be unconditional. He loves us and expects nothing. It is to be unwavering. He will never leave or abandon his bride. Okay, now just think about that for a minute. If your marriage relationship is supposed to show the rest of the world what Christ's love for the church is, how could you ever divorce? You totally destroy the picture of Christ's commitment and love to us. No matter how messed up you get, he never abandons you. He never gives up on you. He continually chases you down because he loves you. It's to be unwavering. He'll never leave. And it's to be characterized by forgiveness. He forgives us completely and continually and over and over and over and often for the same thing, the same thing, the same thing, the same thing. That's what love in a marriage is supposed to look like. Somebody read this passage for us. Colossians 3:12-14.
Those who have been chosen of God, holy in love.
Oh, stop right there. Good. Because we'll tend to just keep reading. How are we described here? Could somebody grab me a bottle of water or a cup of water like this? How are we described here in this first phrase?
Chosen.
There's three descriptions of us. Okay, what's the first one?
Chosen.
Chosen. Okay, now stop a minute. Out of the millions of people in the world, out of the millions of people in the United States, out of the millions of people that live, that live in Chicago, Out of the millions of people that live in your city, out of the thousands of people that live in your subdivision, out of the 100 of people that live on your street, God chose you. That's pretty amazing. And I know He didn't choose you because you're such a good catch. He chose you because He loves you. That's unbelievable. The Creator God of the universe yanked me out of the kingdom of darkness and put me into the kingdom of His beloved Son. Wow. Okay, not only am I chosen, what's the second description there? Holy. He chose you out of all of the people in the world, and then He sets you apart, puts His Spirit in you, and begins to conform you to make you look like Him. Why? Because God is on a mission. What is His mission? That's kind of weak. Let's try that again. God is on a mission. What is His mission? To reveal Himself in His glory. And He does that through your changed life. And He sets you apart to do that. Third description there. Beloved. The Creator God of the universe. The God who went and blew everything into existence. Chose you, set you apart, and dearly loves you. You know what that means? I don't need anything from my wife. I don't need anything from my wife. I have everything I need in this relationship with God. Everything I need. Okay, keep reading.
Put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience.
Okay, stop right there. You know what I always do? I think, okay, Janet and I have just had a moment of that intense fellowship. Now, was I being compassionate? Kind? Humble? Well, of course I'm always humble. Gentle? Patient? And what's interesting is certain times one of those jumps out as more of the others that I really have failed to do. So because I am chosen, set apart, and dearly loved by God, now I can be this way. So how does that get fleshed out? Keep reading for us, verse 13.
Bearing with one another and forgiving each other, whoever has a complaint against anyone, just as the Lord forgave you, so also should you. Beyond all these things, put on love, which is the perfect bond of unity.
I'm going to put off all these things. I put on love. And I can do that because I have everything I need in Christ. And because of that, it puts me in a position now where I can forbear and forgive with no expectation of return. That's huge. Isn't that how God forbears and forgives and loves us? Yeah. Okay, now I want to talk for a minute about the problem with needs, and then we're going to take a break. We have confused today wants with needs. We've confused today wants with needs. Okay, let's try this out. Is sex a need?
No.
Well, now that was interesting. We had a bunch of females go, no, and a guy go,
Well, if you don't have something, you don't exist. Therefore,
is it a personal need that I have to be satisfied and fulfilled?
sure.
I'd say no. Here's why. You can live without sex. You can. See, as soon as I take something and I put it in this category of needs, now I believe I must have that to be fulfilled. And your responsibility is to make sure that I get it. And whatever I do when I don't get it will be justified in my mind because I must have this to survive. So, if sex is a need and you're my spouse and you don't provide it, wherever I go and whatever I do to get it, I'll justify in my mind. Because I think it's a need. Look at this verse. Somebody read 2 Peter 1:3 for us.
Seeing that his divine power has granted to us everything pertaining to life and godliness, through the true knowledge of him who has called us by his own glory and excellence.
Okay, his divine power has given us everything. Get this. The very power that resurrected Christ from the dead lives in you. Don't tell me you can't obey. Don't tell me you can't love this unlovable person. You can tell me you won't obey or you won't love this person, but don't tell me you can't. Because the very power of God that resurrected Christ from the dead lives in you. And that divine power has granted us everything pertaining to life, Zoe. Everything pertaining to life on the horizontal level. Everything pertaining to what I need to exist and be. Everything. And I did a really extensive study on the Greek word everything. And the more I studied, the more I found out it meant everything. Everything you need for life. And everything pertaining to godliness, everything here at this level, and everything that I need to be in a right relationship with God and to become like Him. Everything. Now look what it says. Through the true knowledge of Him that called you. The Greek word for knowledge is gnosko. Here the word is epignosko. And whenever that little preposition epi is put in front of gnosko, it gets translated either true or often real knowledge. And what is assumed when it's used this word is that there's always a relationship between the one knowing and the thing known. Okay? So let me put that in Randy Murphyisms. Seeing that the power that resurrected Christ from the dead is now living inside of you, giving everything you need in life and everything you need to be in the right relationship with God and live for His story and to put Him on display through a true, real, vital, living, experiential relationship with Christ. Do you know how we turn to all these other things that we think are going to give us life? And one of those things could be sex that we turn to, thinking that's going to give us life. You know how we turn to those things? Because we're not having a vital, real, living, experiential relationship with Christ. Because He has given us everything we need. Somebody read this verse, 2 Corinthians 9:8.
And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that always having all sufficiency in everything, you may have an abundance for every good deed.
Hey, look at this. All, always, all, abundance, every. Wow. Do you really believe that? Do you? Then why are you chasing all these other things that somehow you think are going to satisfy you? Whether it's your career, your job, your hobbies, your vacation, your addition, another woman, another man, more grandkids. The list can go on of all these things that we can turn to that we think somehow are going to give us life. Matthew 6:33, Jesus said it this way. But seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. You just talked about worrying about this, not having that, having to have clothes and food and what. Hey, seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. You know what we're busy seeking? all the things that we think are going to make this work in my kingdom. What's going to fill my kingdom? Because I'm king. Now let me show you how this works, and I'm going to take a break. We call this the cycle of self-worship. Well, let's start here in the beginning first. Here in the middle. Okay, who's king? I think I am. So I'm trying to build my own kingdom. In order to build my own kingdom, I'm pursuing all these idols, all these things that I think are going to feed my kingship, right? So here's where we go. We start up here with I desire. I desire something. And then we believe I deserve it. And as soon as you add I deserve to I desire, it always turns into I demand. And this is just another word for a perceived need. I demand. So now what we do is, because we're king and we are demanding this, we look to the circumstances and people in our world to maintain our kingdom, and we start finding idols to feed it. And that's what our expectation is. People and circumstances are going to cooperate with me to make my world work. Well, guess what's going to happen? Idols never fail to fail. You're going to get disappointed. And now your kingdom is getting threatened, and you become judgmental and critical of the people and circumstances in your life. And now you believe this is a right that I have, this is a need that I have, and I have to have this need met for me to survive emotionally. So now my expectations get revealed that I really think it's a right or a need, and my idols are necessary for my emotional survival. Well, you know where that's going to lead me? I get discouraged. And now when my kingdom starts to crumble, I get more self-focused, I feel more self-pity, and then I either become more controlling, approach number 1 or approach number 2. I hunker down and get more controlling, or I just want to give up. Or maybe what I do is say, this idol didn't work, I'm going to go find a new one. The idol of my job and success is over. I've climbed to the top of the peak. I'm at the top. This is all there is. There's no more promotions for me. And you know what? They're hiring all younger guys. So I'm going to go and buy a sports car and find a new woman. See, that's midlife crisis. What is midlife crisis? The idols that you've lived for, you finally realize aren't going to fulfill, so you're going and looking for new ones. That's all that is. So what happens now, I end up with this ungodly sadness and this anger. I begin to either lash out toward others or I turn it inward. And where that's going to take me is depression. Now, I believe there's such a thing as physiological depression. All you have to do is be around somebody who's going through chemotherapy. And chemo physically depresses your body. So I believe there's such a thing as physiological depression. But most of the depression that we experience and most of the depression that the people around you are going to experience is emotional or spiritual depression, not physiological depression. And emotional spiritual depression is the result of coming to the place that I no longer have any hope that my demands are going to be met. It's the loss of hope. And so what I do then is my demands increase and I regroup. I demand life on my terms. My expectations get higher. I get more disappointed. I get discouraged again. Then I get depressed. So I regroup. I get new idols. I make new demands. I have new expectations that get failed. I get disappointed. I demand my rights get met. I get discouraged. Now I get angry. I'm lashing out. And I'm in this crazy cycle of self-worship. Until finally I say, I can't do this anymore. And out of despair, I just want to give up. Okay. What would happen if instead of me being king, instead of trying to build my kingdom, I live for God's kingdom? Okay, now who's in the center? Christ. I'm living for His kingdom. I'm pursuing righteousness now instead of idols. Now look up here. What's missing from the other diagram? Yeah. Uh-huh. You know what the gospel tells me? Remember? I deserve to burn in hell and anything less. That's a pretty good day. I don't deserve anything. When you remove I deserve, which is what the gospel does, it tells me I deserve God's wrath. I don't deserve anything else. Now I have this desire. Okay, and it may be a legitimate desire. Okay? Is it wrong for me to desire that my wife would respect me? God commands her to respect me. Why would it be wrong that I desire that? Here's a question. Do I deserve a wife that respects me? No. So why would I demand it? You see what happens there with expectations? And expectations in our marriage? So now when God is at the center, I desire, and it may be a legitimate desire, now though I look to God, anticipating that His kingdom will advance regardless of the circumstances and actions of others. So when I really see that my expectation is God is going to do what God's going to do, and He is going to advance His kingdom, regardless if people are cooperating with me, because it's not about them cooperating with me for my kingdom, it's all about God and building His kingdom. And He's more than capable of doing whatever He wants to do in their heart and mind. Now I know that His kingdom is going to advance regardless of what these people do or do not do. Now there still could be legitimate disappointment. When Janet is disrespectful to me, is that disappointing? Yeah. Just like when I fail to love her, she's disappointed. But now when these circumstances and people fail me, see, I deal with this pressure through obedience to God's glory. Now, instead of demanding these rights, I can relinquish those perceived rights, and now instead of living in discouragement, I can live in contentment because I'm focused on God's glory and His kingdom, and I realize that He's using suffering to purify me, to make me more like Christ, to put Himself on display in a greater way, because God is on a mission, and what is His mission?
To reveal Himself as the Lord.
And He uses suffering in my life, and how I respond to that as one of the ways He puts Himself on display. So now, instead of lashing out in anger, I can live with love, forgiveness, and reconciliation. Now I live with hope in the light of eternity. Now watch what happens to my desires. Psalmist said it this way: delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Okay. I desire a new Maserati. I'm going to delight in God. So you're going to give me a new Maserati? That's not what that's saying. You know what happens? When I delight in God, when I'm experiencing a living, vital, experiential, real relationship with Him, guess what happens to my desires? God shapes my desires into His desires. And as He shapes my desires into His desires, as those become my desires, God always meets those desires. Because again, it's all about Him. One author said it this way: when we learn to accept people who disappoint us by no longer requiring them to satisfy us, then we're free to love them, to reach toward them for their sake without having to protect ourselves from feeling disappointed by their responses to us. You're chosen, set apart, and dearly loved. You have everything you need through a real, vital, experiential relationship with Christ. And now you're in a position to unconditionally forbear with others and forgive others, just as God in Christ has done for you. Take a break, grab some stuff. Guys, as you get some more refreshments, head into the worship center. Gals, grab some stuff and come right back to your chairs. And we're going to start in 5 minutes.